aquarium gravel for your shrimp tank. What is the best option? There's a lot of information out there. You know, Caridina versus Caridina need completely different substrates. There's shrimp specific, there's sand, there's gravel, there's inert, there's buffering. There's so many different options. What is the best option for you and your shrimp tank? We're gonna dive into that today. What is going on, shrimp keepers? This is Rob with flipaquatics.com, and today we're talking about aquarium gravel. And so I wanted to start the video by talking about, do you need substrate in your aquarium? So if we look at this pond, first of all, we are in our Caridina pond room. This is where we keep all of our mono shrimp, our cherry shrimp, our blue dreams, orange pumpkins, or orange sun kiss as we call them, all the different types of Caridina. This is where we keep them, and this is the system that we keep all of our shrimp in that are Caridina, and mostly ones that prefer harder water. So if you look in here, obviously we don't have any substrate. And so do you need substrate in your aquarium? Yes or no? And the answer is no, you actually don't need it. For us, it actually gets more in the way, because what happens is when we're feeding this tank, when we're keeping, thousands of shrimp in a tank, you can overfeed, they can fall down the substrate, it can pollute the water, shrimp can die, and then our team might not see it on a certain type of color substrate. And so there's a lot of things that can go wrong when using substrate on our scale. But is it better to have substrate or not? And to be honest, on a hobbyist level, it is way better to have substrate. And I will get into all the details of that. But like for us, when we have like such a large scale, so many shrimp, it doesn't make sense to keep substrate, because there's a lot of errors that could happen when having substrate. And then also like cross-contamination. When we turn this pond over, when there's no shrimp left, and then we put new shrimp in there, we don't want any of that old bacteria to still be in the tank. We want to neutralize that, and it's hard to neutralize bacteria in an aquarium because it's down in there, like you'd have to stir it up. And so that's actually why it doesn't make sense for us, but that is the reason it should make sense for you guys. So in an aquarium at home, you're gonna have a whole level of substrate, maybe an inch, maybe 3 inches, depending on how much you do. I personally don't like having more than 3 inches. That's enough to plant most plants in. And then substrate becomes a very good bed for beneficial bacteria, so it'll help you cycle your aquarium. So while we don't have it in here, if I had just a personal tank at home, which I do, I have about 3 inches of substrate, and that is a good bacteria bed for nitrifying bacteria. So highly recommend keeping substrate in your aquarium at home. But the next question is like, what type of substrate do you keep? Now, Caridina are going to need a completely different substrate than Caridina. And if we start including fish, like there's all these different types of substrates that you could use, and which one is best for you? We're going to get into that right now. So here are 3 terms that you're going to hear, and it's inert substrate, buffering substrate, and active substrate. And active and buffering are pretty much the exact same thing, and we'll talk about that. But I first want to point out this tank. This is our 300-gallon. It's got a bunch of antlers in there. It's got a ton of a mono shrimp, some nearite snails, and things like that. This is pull filter sand, which is considered an inert substrate. And we'll go over each type of substrate and what they do. But just so that you guys know, inert means that it's not going to buffer the water parameters. So it's not going to increase the pH, decrease the pH. It's not going to leach calcium into your water. It's not going to leach general hardness into your water. Now, in here you see cerastone, which cerastone is a mineral, and it will actively increase your carbonate hardness. Now, not all substrates are created equal, not all rock is created equal. So like there are going to be different things that increase the parameters in different ways, but inert substrate is the one that you want if you don't want any changes to happen to your parameters. Whereas an active substrate, which we'll talk about this in a little bit, this is something you desperately need for most Caridina shrimp. And that's something that is going to actively influence the parameters in your aquarium, and then buffer them in one way or another, whether it's to make your water harder or make your water softer. It doesn't matter. Or I guess instead of saying harder or softer, I should probably say acidic or alkaline. Acidic means it's a pH of less than 7. Alkaline means it's a pH of 7 or higher. 7 being the midway point. And so that is what an inert substrate is, and that's gonna matter a lot as we get into these next couple sections talking about specific types. And another big thing that I wanna point out is shrimp-specific soil is not for all shrimp. Most shrimp-specific soil is an active substrate that is going to actively decrease the pH in your aquarium and absorb pH, and that is not good for all shrimp types. So you need to know the difference between active substrate or buffering substrate versus inert substrate. It's gonna make a huge difference in the success of you being a shrimp keeper or even a fish keeper, snail keeper, all of the above. It's gonna make you a better hobbyist overall. Hey, if you guys like this video, we do Shrimp Saturday videos every single Saturday, and it's always educational, always inspirational, a lot of things going on. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. Always be up to date with what we're doing here at flipaquatics. Let's start off with my favorite aquarium of all time. This is the 480-gallon tank, and we're gonna be talking about inert substrate. So I'll give you a couple options, and listen, I know you guys are gonna say it, and feel free to say it, but yes, there's algae on the glass, or on the acrylic in this case. I haven't had the time to clean it, and the shrimp actually prefer it, so it really doesn't matter. It's just whether I want it clean or not, and right now it doesn't bother me. So yes, it's a little dirty, but that's okay with me. And you guys can judge me in the comment section. It's fine, I accept it, but it is what it is. So this is actually one of my favorite substrates. This is a small black like river stone. Now this stuff is a completely inert substrate. It doesn't influence the parameters at all. And it will say on the bag whether it influences the pH, whether it doesn't. And honestly, like, you know, this has no mineral content to it. So like we have crypts in here and they're all doing phenomenal. Like they're growing like crazy. And that's with just regular fertilizer. So like this, we have, I would say like anywhere from 1 inch to like, this is probably like 2.5 inches at its deepest part. And the biological filtration or the biological bacteria, the nitrifying bacteria that lives in there makes this tank so stable. And I talk about this all the time. Like, this tank barely ever has fluctuations in pH or anything. It's super stable. It never shows NO3s. Like the plants just consume it as it's there. And this tank is by far the most stable tank that we have. Like we do next to nothing for this, and these shrimp breed like crazy. Like we put maybe 400 or 500 shrimp in here, and there are literally thousands of Caridina shrimp in here. So Caridinas, for the most part, need a inert substrate, and then you can make their parameters what you need them to. They do prefer that harder water, that higher pH, and so you could use some buffering substrates for it, but you would want to stay to like the crushed coral or cichlid sand, things like that. But I don't recommend that for beginners. It's just, there's a lot of fluctuations there. So Caridina in general, inert substrate, having the right water parameters are great. So that is a rock type substrate. Let's go look at some sand substrates that would be good for an inert setup. All right, we're back over at the 300-gallon because this is, again, one of my favorite tanks. I love endlers, I love shrimp, and it's kind of like the best of both worlds. We're using pool filter sand in this tank, which in my opinion, pool filter sand is literally the best sand substrate that you could do. The thing that I like about sand versus gravel is you don't run the risk of stuff falling down into it. It kind of sits on top. Some people think that's a good thing. Some people think it's a bad thing. I personally like it because it makes it easier to clean the tank. It makes it easier to see when there's an issue. Food's not gonna fall down into the crevices of the sand because there aren't crevices. And it's easier to plant in. So like the rock that we just talked about, it's a little difficult to like get the roots to stay underneath it. But in a sand tank, it's really easy. And you can see like, we got, I believe this is Valsenaria, a type of valve. I believe it's regular junk valve, might be Italian valve, something like that. But you can see it just kind of spread everywhere. And again, we do have some root tabs in here, but we're not like, it's not a nutrient rich substrate. Sand is inert, pool filter sand specifically. And so this stuff is really great for a very basic setup. If you guys want something super easy, super simple, something that you can go to your local pool dealership or something like that and get, this is a great option. We do sell this on our website. It's called Trimple Pool Filter Sand. If you don't have a place to get it locally, feel free to get it from us. But this is usually a very inexpensive substrate that is a great inert substrate that is usually clean that you can use in your aquarium right away. as we're going through all the different substrates today, why don't you guys drop me a comment down below and let me know what is your favorite type of substrate? What do you use in your home aquarium? Because I'm curious. You know, I have a couple that I use here that we'll talk about today, but I really want to know what you guys are using, because maybe you got a really cool one that I've never seen before, and I definitely want to check it out. Let's talk about shrimp specific soil. Now, here we are at one of my favorite tanks, which is a Caridina type shrimp, which is deep blue bulls. Now these guys are absolutely stunning. Take a look at them. Like, these are one of my favorite shrimp of all time. One, because I love blue shrimp. I absolutely love blue shrimp, and you cannot get a better blue than these guys. So these guys are absolutely phenomenal. Now, to actually talk about the substrate, this is Brightwell Rio Oscura. It is our preferred buffering substrate or shrimp specific substrate. And this one will lower the pH, it will absorb KH. Now, the reason that's important is shrimp love consistency. So for most Caridina shrimp, at least all Caridina shrimp that like a low pH, you need a buffering substrate. That is why we are using Rio Oscuro in here. There's plenty of other options out there, like there's Fluval Shrimp Stratum, there's ADA Amazonia, I'm sure there's Contra Soil, there's other options out there. All of them do pretty much the same thing. I found the most consistency with Rio Oscuro. So if you're looking to keep Taiwan bees, crystal reds, most tiger shrimp, most pintos, you're gonna need a buffering substrate. So this is usually used with RO water, remineralized with GH only, no KH in the water. But if you do have a little bit of KH in your water, this substrate will pull the KH out. And that is why it's a buffering substrate. It is actively trying to lower the pH in your tank, and then it will hold it stable. So this usually holds at right around like 5.8, 6.2, something like that. All batches are a little bit different, but the consistency is what you really want, and that is what this will give you. So this is on the acidic side, the soft water side. There are some buffering substrates on the hard water side, which we can go talk about that next. But this is the #1 option for Caridina shrimp, Rio Oscuro by Brightwell. It's what we recommend. It's what we use here at flipaquatics on our 100+ aquariums. Next up, we have our snail system. Now, this is our nearest snail system. These guys originate from the ocean, so they like that high pH. So what we do, obviously we're running them on our tap, well, it's not obvious, but we are running them on tap water. Our tap water is very hard, but down here in the sump, you can actually see we have what's called crushed coral. Crushed coral is ground up shells and coral and things like that is actively increasing the KH in the water, which is gonna raise the pH, which is gonna put calcium in there, which is good for their shells. And so this is the opposite of like a shrimp specific soil, which is lowering the pH, decreasing the KH in the tank. This one is actually increasing the KH and increasing the pH. So this is the opposite side of buffering. Now, if you have very soft water at your home and you don't want to get into like remineralizing RO water or remineralizing your water, you could use something like this, crushed coral, with like sand or rock or things to increase your pH, increase your hardness for Neocaridina shrimp. But I would say that that is a little bit more inconsistent, and you have to be on top of your game and be testing your tank on probably a bi-weekly basis to know that nothing's getting far out of whack. So this is a good option if you need something to increase your KH in your water for invertebrates, specifically snails. And so that is what I recommend. There's also different types of substrate that are specifically made for cichlids, which is like cichlid sand. And that would also be a good option for a system like this. We don't use it in these tanks because, again, it gets a little messy and we don't want to deal with the mess. We don't want our team to make any errors. And so we try to keep it as simple as possible. But I do highly recommend it for you at home to have aquarium gravel or aquarium substrate in your aquarium to really give a good home for that beneficial bacteria. Just to recap, do you need substrate in your aquarium? The short answer is no, but it would be extremely beneficial to do it. And especially on a hobbyist level where you don't have a ton of shrimp in there, it can be extremely beneficial to have it. You're not shuffling shrimp in and out. You're not feeding for 1,000 shrimp. So I definitely think it's beneficial. Now, deciding which substrate is right for you really depends on what type of shrimp you want to keep, what type of water parameters you're going for, but there's a lot of options out there. Inert substrates like sand, like rock are really good. Buffering substrates are good for specific situations. If you have Caridina shrimp, you want a low pH, definitely get that active substrate by Brightwell, Rio Oscuro, or any other type of options that is going to lower your pH. And then if you have soft water at home and you actually want hard water, you could try using cichlid sand or crushed coral. There's definitely a couple options out there that you can do some research on. And I just wanted to give you guys the basic overview of what you can do and hopefully set you up for success. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. And we definitely appreciate all that you guys do for us here at Flipaquatics. You guys make it a great day. As always, God bless, and catch you guys on the flip side.